previous podcast, I spoke about how AI is making it much easier to build and scale systems, and how HR work is shifting from execution towards judgment, supervision, and refinement. While thinking further about this idea, another question started emerging. This one is on the recruitment and selection of HR employees required to carry out the HR work. If execution itself is becoming much more easier and system building fell in every HR's hands, as I've spoken about in my last podcast, then the way we do recruitment and look at candidates also changes. The changes that is visible in the HR job market is that there's a high demand for AI literacy among other things required in an HR applicant. So in this podcast, let's see how the HR market is evolving and what is changing exactly. If you ask an HR regarding the questions asked in their interviews, you'll find that some of the questions do not sit well with the times. These questions, like how many recruitments do you do in a month, and what is the ratio of your work and operations to recruitment, puts the wrong impression on the work that HR deems important. It sounds like the factor that is important in HR's work is not the number of times someone has made a good judgment, but the number of times they have done a particular task, and that signifies their expertise. When questions such as these are asked, it feels that HR's contributions comes from the speed at which they process requests, number of queries they handle, and the count of checklists they complete monthly. This has started reflecting in HR's work too, where HR's focus on task completion numbers and not on outputs, because these are the easiest things to standardize, scale, and evaluate consistently across the organization. HR thus has started feeling like completed completing a task than actually doing some work. For a long time, though, this was the case where finishing a checklist was the work itself. And that feels like a little strange right now because AI is already starting to handle many of these tasks which were done mechanically before. It almost feels like we built an entire profession around being reliable policy enforcers. And that was fine when things were manual and slow, but when automation starts handling much of these repetitive operational tasks, it naturally raises a deeper question about where the human contribution and value now lies in HR work. Uncertainty around the value that HR provides has risen, and a large number of factors are causing that, such as some of them being workplace habits. And honestly, that is not unusual. Systems usually tend to preserve what is already familiar, not necessarily because it is always better, but because familiarity often feels safe during periods of change. So, when organizations try to improve quality, they sometimes end up using the same methods that help them maintain stability earlier. These include activities like increasing the layers of hierarchy and reporting, increasing controls and regulations, and increasing the number of training programs that HRs do. This is not because anyone is intentionally trying to create complexity, but because those approaches once worked at scale. The problem is that when work itself starts changing, these old approaches do not always create better outcomes. Sometimes they only increase the amount of activity around the work. So then HR must move beyond the comfort of simply completing tasks, right? Yes, indeed. HR needs to inculcate strong AI technical skills as well as develop a mindset that places strong emphasis on curiosity, openness to change, and a willingness to experiment and even fail fast, which helps them learn fast. One thing that observed is that HR teams do the best work when they're not adopting new tools, but they are changing the way that they do work completely. They behave less like administrators managing fixed processes and more like people continuously observing, improving, and designing how work actually happens inside the organization. They pay attention to patterns that may not exist inside policy documents, but still affect the quality of work, trust among team members, and affects the organization's health. And maybe that is because they realize that the real value is not in enforcing rules, but in understanding why rules break in the first place. So, how can HR learn this art? When each HR member starts building their own workflows around the problems that they face in their day to day work, they actually start observing how collaboration, trust, and communication are affected are affecting organizational outcomes. When these workflows are so easy to automate using AI, it frees up more time for further observation and fix the systems in place. Since many workplace risks are not always immediately visible at the leaders level, and since through everyday interactions and learning through operational frictions that the team faces and behavior in teams behaviors, which HR is often close to, the HR can manage the workflows much better and give solutions around people, systems, and incentives. If organizations continue viewing HR only through the operational execution point of view, they may struggle to fully adapt to the changing nature of work that AI is gradually introducing. So, as you evaluate performance this quarter, it may be worth asking, are we only rewarding people for completing tasks, or are we rewarding them for identifying deeper organizational risks and actually improving how the work happens? Thanks for listening. We'll continue exploring this further.